Hey, peace. What's happening, everyone? On our deal with.
Like the rushing of a mighty wind. Like the rushing of a mighty wind.
Are there criticisms of the 13th Amendment being unconstitutional? Yes. There were real criticisms of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution at the time, but they were less about, quote, it's unconstitutional, and more about federal power, economic disruption, and its scope. Here are the strongest steelman arguments critics made. 1. It violates states' rights. Claim. Slavery was a state-regulated institution, so the federal government had no authority to abolish it nationwide. Before the Civil War, states decided whether slavery was legal. The amendment overrode all state laws at once. Critics argued, if the federal government can abolish slavery, it can abolish anything. The core fear: destruction of the Federalist balance. 2. It centralizes too much power in Congress. The amendment includes this clause: Congress shall have power to enforce this article. Claim. This gives Congress open-ended authority over labor and civil conditions. Critics worried it could expand beyond slavery into broader labor regulation. Framing. This isn't just ending slavery, it's giving Congress a blank check. 3. It was passed under wartime pressure. Claim. Like the 14th Amendment, critics argued it was not fully free consent. Southern states were defeated militarily, had limited political power during ratification. Critics said this was passed in a moment of coercion, not calm constitutional debate. 4. It destroys property rights. This was one of the strongest and most common arguments at the time. Claim. Enslaved people were legally considered property under prior law. Abolishing slavery eliminated billions in today's terms in property value. Critics argued this violated the Takings Clause, the Fifth Amendment, and protection of property rights. Framing. The government just confiscated property without compensation. 5. It will collapse the Southern economy. Claim. Slavery was the foundation of the Southern labor system. Critics predicted economic collapse, social instability, and labor shortages. Framing. You're destroying an entire economic system overnight. 6. What does slavery actually mean? This became a long-term legal debate. Claim. The amendment bans slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime. Critics and later thinkers argued, what counts as involuntary servitude? Could it apply to labor contracts, peonage, prison labor? This ambiguity made some uneasy. 7. It opens the door to social equality. Some critics feared this was just the first step. Claim. Ending slavery would inevitably lead to citizenship claims, voting rights, social integration. Framing. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of federal social engineering. Where these arguments break down. The amendment process itself is constitutional. Amendments can override prior structures. Slavery contradicted core American principles, liberty and natural rights. The war fundamentally changed the political reality of the Union. And the Supreme Court has never treated the 13th Amendment as illegitimate. Critics didn't just oppose civil rights laws. They argued the entire Reconstruction framework, from the 13th to the 15th Amendment, reshaped America in ways the original Constitution never intended. Did critics also argue that the 14th Amendment was unconstitutional? Yes. Some critics absolutely did argue that the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution itself was unconstitutional, especially in the years after the Civil War. But the nature of that argument is important. It wasn't just, quote, "we don't like it." It was procedural, constitutional, and philosophical. Let's break down the strongest versions of that claim. 1. It was not properly ratified. The procedural argument. Claim: Southern states were forced to ratify the 14th Amendment, so it wasn't legitimately adopted. After the Civil War, former Confederate states were under military occupation. Congress required them to ratify the amendment to rejoin the Union. Critics argued that's coercion, not constitutional consent. The Steelman framing: the Constitution requires voluntary ratification by states. If states had no real choice, the process was illegitimate. 2. Congress had no authority to impose it. Claim: Congress exceeded its powers during Reconstruction. Critics believed the federal government cannot restructure state governments. Forcing new constitutions and amendments equals overreach. Framing: Congress rewrote the rules of the Union after the fact. 3. It destroys state sovereignty. Claim: the 14th Amendment fundamentally altered the balance of power. Before, states controlled civil rights and citizenship rules. After, the federal government could override state laws, define citizenship nationally, and enforce equal protection. Critics saw this as a permanent transfer of power from states to Washington. 4. It was never meant to be this broad. Even some who accepted the amendment later argued. The claim: courts expanded it far beyond original intent. Originally meant to protect freed slaves, but later used for desegregation, incorporation of the Bill of Rights, broad civil rights protections. Framing: this amendment became a blank check for federal power. 5. It redefined citizenship without consent. The claim: birthright citizenship, first clause of the 14th Amendment, was controversial. It made formerly enslaved people citizens automatically. Critics at the time argued citizenship should be controlled by states or more limited criteria. 6. Revolution disguised as amendment. This is the deepest critique. Claim: the 14th Amendment wasn't just an amendment, it was a constitutional transformation. Critics believed it changed federalism, citizenship, and rights enforcement. without a true national consensus. Framing: this wasn't an amendment, it was a second founding imposed by force. Reality check: where this argument fails today. The Supreme Court has long treated the 14th Amendment as fully valid. It underpins civil rights law, due process protections, equal protection doctrine. Key cases: the Slaughterhouse cases, limited early interpretation. Brown versus Board of Education, expanded equal protection. In modern constitutional law, there is no serious legal argument that the 14th Amendment is invalid. But historically, that argument was very real and influential, especially in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The civil rights movement didn't just challenge racism. It relied on an amendment some people once claimed wasn't even legitimate. What were the arguments against the 15th Amendment? The 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution, ratified in 1870, prohibited denying the right to vote based on race. But at the time, and even afterward, there were strong criticisms, especially from those prioritizing states' rights, social order, and federal limits. Here are the strongest steelman arguments critics made. 1. Voting is a state power. Claim: elections and voter qualifications were traditionally controlled by states. The Constitution originally left voting rules largely to states. The amendment imposed a national standard. Critics argued the federal government has no authority to dictate who can vote in state elections. Core idea: the 15th Amendment was a violation of federalism and the 10th Amendment principles. Number 2, it expands federal power too far. Like the 13th and 14th Amendments, it includes Congress shall have power to enforce this article. Claim: this gives Congress broad, ongoing authority over elections. Critics feared federal oversight of elections and federal troops or officials interfering in state processes. Framing: this opens the door to permanent federal control of voting. Number 3, it was imposed on the South. Claim: Southern states were under Reconstruction pressure, military occupation, required to ratify amendments to rejoin the Union. Critics said this wasn't freely adopted, it was forced. 4, it creates political instability. This was a major social or political argument at the time. Claim: expanding voting rights rapidly would disrupt existing political systems. It would create inexperienced electorates, and it would lead to corrupt or manipulated voting blocs. Critics framed it as too much change, too fast. 5, it doesn't go far enough. The reverse critique. Interestingly, some critics came from the opposite direction. Claim: the amendment only bans discrimination based on race, not literacy tests, poll taxes, property requirements. So critics said this creates the illusion of equality without guaranteeing it. This later proved important. States used these loopholes. Number 6, it will lead to federal enforcement abuse. Claim: to enforce voting rights, the federal government might intervene in elections, might override state elections, and might use courts or troops. Critics feared the cure is worse than the disease. 7. It changes the nature of the Union. This is the deeper philosophical argument. Claim: before Reconstruction, the U.S. was a union of semi-sovereign states. After, the federal government defines citizenship, rights, and voting. Critics saw this as a transformation of the Constitution, not just an amendment. Where these arguments break down: the modern view. The amendment process itself is constitutional. Amendments can override state authority. The amendment was necessary to prevent racial disenfranchisement. Later laws like the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were passed to enforce it. The Supreme Court has consistently upheld its validity. Critics of the 14th Amendment didn't just oppose voting rights. They argued the federal government had no constitutional authority to control elections at all. So are the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments unconstitutional? Depends on who you ask, and on how who you ask defines America. Anyway, that's about it for this video. Hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, like the video. If you don't like the video, leave a comment. Tell us why you don't like the video. Either way, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because there will be more videos. Alright, y'all. Once again, thanks for stopping through. And you're done now. We're going to catch you on the next one. Peace.
I want you to listen very, very carefully.
Tell the youth them to be strong. You can't tell the youth them to preach wrongs. While you trod it on these lands, just remember every man is equal. Yeah. Each one teach one, and our Father God, him are the only done. So make we reason, smoke trees, span the ends, all of the meds. Take a look at life, and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen, and it's no surprise. And I just, so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's a government, no have no heart, them no care about poor people. Yeah, bigger heads no love people again. Them more sad than Hitler them. Me see friends now reason again. Vex through whistle a blame. More time it hurt me to see how the face deal with the eagle of them. Regular me see it a pain. Regular me see it a pain. Take a look at life and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen and it's no surprise. And I just, so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's a government, no have no heart, them no care about poor people. Social commentary, drop that one, your principle, you don't know. The global will come and do it. Some people life every day, it's stress. The high price from JPS, that topic is currently. Jah alone, him a go help you. We need food, cause we no healthy. We are feel the pain, beg you protect we. In our life, we have no envy. Take a look at life, and don't close your eyes. Sometimes things happen, and it's no surprise. And I just, so it go, so it go, so it go, so it go. It's a government, no have no heart, them no care about poor people.